Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest narration of the web series Forgotten Dungeon. If you are new to the series, there is a playlist listed down below in the description. And as always, I hope that you enjoy. Chapter 75. Uno Point of View. Stupid. So stupid. Here I was, once again getting ahead of myself, and not taking all the possible factors into account. You can say that no plan survives contact with the enemy, and yada yada yada. But forgetting about Non's hatred of Gaynard Kingdom was completely my fault. It was already a pain to stop her from decimating the undead above ground, not to mention murdering more of Charles's soldiers, and now I had to deal with her inability to differentiate between the new Silver Oasis and the former kingdom-controlled Silver Oasis. As to say, the lack of ability to understand politics. Tina, you're alive! Charles continued his crazy shouts, only adding to the confusion while his guards desperately tried to keep him apart from the clearly undead girl. I had my own screaming to do, so I promptly ignored his reaction. There was a problem for another time. None, please, I repeated my earlier askance. These people are not enemies. They no longer respect the authority of the Gaynard Kingdom, an independent city-state. That's what they are. Traitors, all, she sent back, not even trying to speak aloud. Child killers. What? Making use of my confusion, the revenant girl sunk into the shadows, her usually emotionless face sending shivers down my non-existent spine. Guardian, block her, I ordered, desperately scanning the room. Despite not hearing the contents of my conversation, the humans' alertness shot through the roof. They knew that something was amiss from the Guardian's reaction and Non's undisguised hostility. Only Charles still didn't accept that the former ally was now trying to murder him. Non appeared from the Guardian's shadow, popping up between him and his charges. She jumped, ready to drop on her victims like a personification of vengeance. Thankfully, the armored warrior noticed her shadow jump and swatted her back while she was still suspended in the air. A superhuman feat at that. For a millisecond, the metal collided with metal, and a jarring screech echoed in the room. The shadow assassin was thrown straight at a nearby wall, her arm stretched out to cushion the impact. This turned out to be not that great of an idea, because her appendages crunched nastily as she hit the rock wall. It bent in the wrong direction, making me cringe at the mere sight of the damage. This, however, didn't stop her in the slightest, as she glanced down before fixing it up with a simple use of inhuman strength. The arm crunched again before regaining its earlier shape. After the damage was undone, Non focused on the humans once more. Stop, she hissed towards the Guardian, her eyes blaring with dangerous light. My God, little lady, it is the law's order for visitors not to come to harm. I live to serve, he answered with a mirthless chuckle, slowly repositioning his armored body between the undead and Charles's entourage. My due. I know that vengeance is what you subsist on, the Guardian answered with a touch of pity in his words. But is it really an act of righteous revenge if you dish it out on innocents? Where does it end, and where does senseless slaughter begin? Reconsider before you fall into darkness. His words had fallen on deaf ears, as the feeling of aggression Non gave out didn't diminish in the slightest. My servant's words didn't strike a chord, so I silently added my 2 cents to convince her that, and reinforcements were already on the way, so playing for time was a valid strategy. You mentioned child killers. Who are you talking about? Charles and his cronies didn't have any contact with you and yours. How are they worthy of your rage? The undead's gaze turned towards my fake onyx call. Blood, hawk, friend, she ground her teeth. Enemy. Wait. Your enemy is anyone who's friends with Lord Hawk. That scary dude who kicked my ass and saved the elves. That Lord Hawk. Enemy. Non nodded. Vampire. That's a bit too large of a revelation, I mumbled helplessly. How do you even... My voice trailed off. You know what? I don't want to know. The highest level leader of a monster hunting organization in the country. An organization that was literally named after him. Mind I remind you, that guy is a monster. A freaking vampire. Sure, let's roll with it. The king and queen were also turned, so it isn't that unbelievable. Another nod. Now kill. No. This time Non decided to sacrifice one of her daggers, throwing it in Charles's direction. The Guardian intercepted it, of course, but doing so forced him to overextend. His form lunged forward as the girl sunk into another shadow, a second later emerging behind his armored frame. The situation was similar to one before, but this time my guardian was just a tad too slow to intervene. But none had also miscalculated. These people weren't a usual prey, helpless soldiers or undead taken by surprise, but instead prepared human elites hardened by countless battles. Well, 2 of them. This Adam fellow was instead busy shaking in his boots. Anyway, that was why the moment taken as she prepared to strike was already a moment too late. A fireball and an arcane lance punched through her center of gravity at the same time, once again sending her flying. There was a thunk, and another wall had its carvings reduced to dust. The sculpture was going to be exasperated. Contrary to the explosive visuals, Non was pretty much unharmed, her black eyes filled with anger, not pain. She started to rise, but the time was already up. Reinforcements had arrived. A gaggle of spider-walkers and a few spider-walker generals burst into the room, readying their nets and needles. A few spider-walker butchers arrived too, primarily to provide support in case somebody was hurt. The large room suddenly felt much smaller. With the metallic appendages clanking on the floor, under my direction they moved near Non, aggressively waving their arms. "We have you surrounded, Non. Please, desist," I answered with a bit of giddily. She glared back and decided to keep silent. "You said that those who are Lord Hawk's friends are your enemies, but it was him and other Gaynor Kingdom bigwigs who sent the undead army against the surface people, against the Silver Oasis, whose leader you just tried to assassinate. Doesn't that make you a person that's helping the Gaynor Kingdom the most?" There was confusion in her eyes. Good. One last push. "An enemy of my enemy is my friend. Does that ring any bells? You already had to flee from the kingdom's pursuit. Are you going to keep trying with the same resources to get the same result? Or maybe you need allies, strong allies, that can easily fend for themselves, just like they fended your attack. Think about it." She answered with a short nod, her gaze considering. She tugged on her braided hair, thoughts of battle instantly forgotten. "What was that?" Charles asked as I cursed under my nose. Right. I had to explain her presence. "Why is Tina down here? What happened to her? What was with all that metal?" He screamed out the last words. She scoffed, sizing up the redhead mage and waving her hand in my course direction. "Tell!" She spoke and then promptly melded into darkness, but not before dumping the explaining duty on my shoulders. Woman. I sighed before answering. "That's a long story, I'm afraid. We have time? Sure. Let's start at the beginning." It took a few hours to explain how Tina, now Non, was a member of the Hawks, her role as a spy for the said group, how she was rescued by the divine magic. I sure wasn't going to tell them that it was Gangria, the corrupted goddess, that did it, and then started working as my dungeon's contracted monster. In the meantime, I also asked Non about the child killers that she was raving about, and learned what happened to her siblings. Starvation was a bad way to go, even more when it happened to the children. When I finished, the faces of Charles's entourage were hard to describe. Both Charles and Adam were nearly crying their hearts out. It was easy to understand. The most interesting one, however, was Master Vincent. His face looked a little bit off. There was regret, anger, and a pinch of understanding in his expression. "You know, Charles," he started, speaking in barely a whisper, "I knew that the situation in Shieldstar was bad, that the people living in the capital were dying of hunger. That's how I get most of my recruits. Orphans with a penchant for magic, taken off the streets. I noticed they seemed to be especially devout, more so even than mages reared by my family," the noble agreed. "Saving one's life does not that for a man or a woman," Master Vincent smiled feebly, before putting his hand on Charles's shoulder. "And yet I didn't understand how bad the situation was, how the people were not even starved but deliberately killed off, and then probably buried in the dungeon. That's horrible. It's only efficient. Use whatever you can use, right? Even level-less starved children provide some sustenance to the capital's food-bearing dungeon." "Don't let Tina," she's now called Non, I interrupted. After glaring at my interruption, Charles continued his thoughts. "Don't let Non get wind of this. She'll try to assassinate the Gaynor Kingdom's whole damn bureaucratic class." "And maybe she should," murmured Adam, his expression still horrified. The old man wasn't taking the news well. "One death is a tragedy," I cited. "A death of 1,000, merely a statistic. There was a brief mourning silence before I continued. The people giving out orders aren't seeing what the commoners see, so it's easy for them to not care. Is that also ancient wisdom from a bygone era? Damn it, me and my big mouth. Yes, I answered curtly. It is oddly comforting that the human race doesn't change. The atrocities committed by the ancients remain the same as the ones done today. Otherwise, why would there be a need for such a callous saying? Mused Master Vincent, his eyes clouded with emotion. Charles simply clapped his hands. Let's focus on the now. Seeing the agreement, he continued. Yep, I agree to your terms. You will get your volunteers and the required sacrifices. After they return, I'll send Agnes to join you on the 4th floor. On one condition, though. Yes, your corps will remain in the room. A fine collateral, I agreed. The fake corps can stay here all they want. That is agreed, then. Of course, I'll have my creatures stationed nearby for everyone's safety. That is fair, Charles agreed impassively. After my fiancée is healed, I'll also arrive to finish what we started, he added ominously. Sure. I was certain that this meant an expedition would be forming with the sole goal to shatter me, once I outlived my usefulness. Please hurry, though. The sooner I finish my tests, the earlier I can start healing your precious girlfriend. She's not, he breathed out with a tired gaze before forcibly changing the topic. If that's all, then we will begin our ascent shortly. Would it be all right if I stayed on the 3rd floor? The garden there is fascinating. Master Vincent took his opportunity to push his interests. What about your safety? The red-haired noble worried aloud, his gaze focusing on a few of my creations still lingering around. I let them stay, because no one knew when Non's mood would turn. Young Charles, there are things in life more important than one's safety. Researching farming techniques of monsters located deep underground isn't one of them. Maybe for you, the mage grumbled under his breath before smiling teasingly. Alas, weren't you given a gift yourself? Way to disparage the little rats after receiving such a boon. You're not wrong. Their generosity may be a way to stave off the starvation. Charles shook his head. Do what you want. Why, it's fine with me, too, I added, not wanting to be outdone. It was my dungeon, damn it. It wasn't all bad, though. Maybe, just maybe, my rattlings can learn something useful from the old master of the arcane. I need to remember to give them copies of the sonic weapon, too. Well, it was technically a megaphone, but tomato. Having said their lines, the humans retreated, once again, following the Guardian's armored back. The journey upward was uneventful, save for a small gathering of rattlings contained in the gardens. They waved and squeaked in delight at the mere sight of Charles. Seeing him not knowing how to react was kind of funny. All good things come to an end, though. Soon they reached the surface, only to be greeted by the frustrated runner. The young man was sweating even more than before, and started to yell as soon as he saw Charles emerge from the dungeon's entrance. Master Charles! Master Charles! Trouble! Calm down, boy, the noble yelled back, despite not being that much older. What's the problem? Master Outless has disappeared with most of the Republic-born people. Their horses are also missing. Curse that merchant! Charles spat angrily. And he left a letter for you. The noble took the paper gingerly before breaking the seal. Now, that was interesting. If only. Yes! I had an evil eye nearby, and it was growing just in the right spot to glean the contents of the letter. Now, if only I had some popcorn. Master Charles, I hope this letter finds you well. You're probably furious both at me and my people, but please, hold back your anger. We simply had no choice, and the time was not on our side. What I'm about to tell you is a bribe, plain and simple. It is, however, one of the most guarded secrets of our people. Well, not anymore. The cogs of history had turned, and soon what was secret would become to light. But you will have an earlier start than your competitors, and knowledge is always worth something, even if only to bargain with it or sell it to the highest bidder. The continent is dying. I'm sure you know it as well as I and every other doomed soul walking this earth. Most of us choose to take our last stand and defend those we love and the country we were born into, to the bitter end. The Dross Republic chose differently. We poured our resources into exploring the unknown, and in the end, in the blood and sweat of our sailors, we found it, a mythical second continent. We called it Drosia. Quaint, don't you think? And we're all going there, by boat, by airship, on the backs of tamed monsters, and on board never-seen underwater machines. For 3 years we tirelessly prepared, and now we're ready. The few who chose to remain will bury the cities and destroy the remaining infrastructure. The reservoirs of toxic substances and corrosive gases will be released. Soon, the former Dross Republic will be reduced to ash and rubble. May the world know that even during our escape, we honored the agreements made by our ancestors. No monster will leave the Republic's soil alive. I and my people are already late. The escape vessels are leaving, and if we stretch our supplies, we can barely make it. And while working for your oasis was intoxicating, this was never a stable commitment, but just a temporary fling. I do not wish to lie down on my bones here, in defense of a foreign dream. So forgive me, I don't chase after the people I've taken. Yours eternally, Otilus came up. P.S. The horses were taken from my caravan. I'm not stealing anything. Well, damn. End of chapter. I'd quickly like to thank the T5 peeps: Cold War Boomerwaffen, Sevaren Serberous, Bushmaster 177, HenryTheRed, Casper Arnholtz, Cold War Boomerwaffen, Elijah Silvercross, Dragzoon W.R.E, and Sevaren Serberous. Thank you very much.